like you're breaking a rule. Hello and welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. I am setting up the canner this evening because the caramelized onions that I set up yesterday are done. But this is what we have. The volume of the onions has reduced by about half. It's kind of insane. And obviously we've got that lovely caramel brown color. I have added some salt and pepper to this. I had tasted the caramelized onions and they are delicious, but they were just missing something, and I think salt was it. So what I'm going to be doing today is technically rebel canning. There's no approved method for canning caramelized onions. I think the only approved recipe is for like little onions, the little, I can't remember what they're called, little button onions. These are not those. So just be aware, I'm breaking a rule here, and should you decide to also break rules, please do your own research beforehand.
But Gandalf held him back. "Wait," he said in a commanding voice, giving Frodo a quick look from under his bristling brows. No apparent change came over the ring. After a while, Gandalf got up, closed the shutters outside the window, and drew the curtains. The room became dark and silent.
So I've got my regular canner going, and we also are going to run a little bit of overflow in my Nesco. I love this thing, especially this time of year when I seem to have a lot of overflow from my regular canner. The onions, the pints of onions, need to pressure can for 70 minutes, which is an hour and 10 minutes if you're counting. Alrighty, so there are plenty more onions where these came from, and so I'm also going to be loading the freeze dryer. Now I did just shut this off, so the onions are still warm. A lot of people will tell you that you should pre-freeze your trays in like a freezer before you stick them in the freeze dryer because it's going to take less time in the freeze dryer. I don't find that that's necessarily true because the freeze dryer still has to cool itself down into a really deep cold state before it starts the freeze drying process, and it doing so with the food in there, it doesn't really add that much time. Not to where it makes it less time to freeze these for 24 hours prior to putting them in. It doesn't extend the freeze time by a day for sure. All that to say, I'm not super worried about these being warm. The freeze dryer will handle it fine. Oops. I had a viewer suggest to me that I should freeze dry some of these caramelized onions because they taste great as is, just as like a snack. And I also saw where people were putting them as like a salad topping and a topping to a burger without rehydrating. It sounds amazing. We actually had rabbit salad with coleslaw on some homemade buns for dinner, and a freeze-dried like crunchy caramelized onion would have been really, really good on that. So I'm really excited about this.
You didn't know it was there? Like, you basically
got these little stacker things from another channel. I don't remember what it's called. Freeze drying supplies? Something simple like that. Yes, freeze-drying-supplies.com. I like these. We have a small workspace to deal with, so when I don't have space to just lay out all these trays, it's really nice to be able to stack them, and then I can walk outside with the whole thing and not have to take trips. Good afternoon. It's actually the hottest part of the day today, which usually is not the best idea to do your work in the middle of the day. But sometimes you either combat the heat or you combat the mosquitoes. And so I think I'd rather deal with the heat today. It's not too bad today, but we are supposed to be under a heat advisory coming up. Today is the first day of summer, and it's like the world knows it. It was a really nice spring with a lot of moisture and not super high temps, but the high temps are here. And actually the moisture is one of the reasons that the chicken run here has really started to grow up. And I usually don't mow in here. What I'll do is I'll set some goats loose in the chicken run to eat down the greens, and that's what we're gonna do today. At least it's one of today's projects. So back here I have my buck feral with Margie. They're in their shelter right now. This whole thing used to be chicken run, and we put this fence in the middle so that I could use some of the space as like a goat breeding pen, and it's worked out well. But you see we have this post here and then that one there. We really would like a gate here eventually. Levi, I think, wants to reset that post. But I think for now, I'm actually gonna cut out this fence so that the goats and the chickens can go back and forth. The goats can help keep the weeds and things down over here, and then the chickens can scratch through the goat poop and help them with their parasites. So it's a win-win. I'm not sure what all this tall stuff is. It might be goldenrod, just not flowering at the moment, and it's probably not going to after Farrell and Margie tear it down. But there's this stuff. There's a bunch of nice tall grass. I do have a broody duck over here. She's not on anything. Hi, ma'am. Are you still guarding nothing? Ow! Ow! I don't think she's on anything. I don't have any drakes, so if she's on anything, it would be chicken egg. And historically, this mama duck is not great at raising chickens. So Farrell's gotten to be a big boy. Usually goats don't stop growing until they are 3. Farrell is 2. He is 70% La Mancha. He's a big boy, and I just love him. Next thing on this afternoon's agenda is I wanted to come check on the tomatoes that are growing out here on the lane. I see a wasp, which is generally a good thing this time of year. In the last weekly vlog, I harvested some cabbage, and someone asked me how I was able to harvest cabbage and other brassicas this time of year without worm damage, and the answer is wasps. They will go around the garden plants and literally pluck off worms and grubs and things from the plants, maybe even slugs. I don't know. I have seen them fly away with like caterpillars, and they do really good work in the garden. I can't stand wasps. They scare me, especially in fall time when they have really big nests that they're trying to defend. But for now, I tolerate them. I'm not sure what they're looking for, army worms, tomato hornworms, but so far the tomatoes are looking good. This here is Dr. Witchy's. And these guys over here were supposed to be Belgian giants, although they do not look like it. They are getting bigger. This guy looks closer to what I expect of a Belgian giant, but in any case, I do need to get these guys clipped more firmly onto the trellis. You can see right here. This is what I'm working with this year. It's these little round tomato clips. They clip together like so, and they hold together with that little tab, and then to open it, you just push down and you can reuse them. I do have a tomato tape tie tool that I really like, but it keeps jamming on me. The staples aren't working out super well. Plus, this is reusable. I like this. Got a clip down here, and sometimes I will remove a clip that's lower down and move it further up. See, I can unclip from right there and then clip up here, and that helps my little clippies go further. And you see here I've got a clip holding the tomato here. These are very thick stalks, but that hasn't seemed to matter. These seem big enough, but I can just move it up like so. Now, I did have a tomato plant in the middle here that had some disease. I decided just to pull it out, and I think that was a good call. But I think we might be able to take up the space on the trellis with one of these suckers from over here. There. And now this plant can grow up this way, and we can still utilize a lot of the trellis. Down here I have my Berries Crazy cherry tomato plants, and these guys have huge, lovely trusses of fruit. The further down the plant you go, the older the trusses get. So this one down here has a lot of fruit. So far, none have ripened, but I did see a ripe tomato in the greenhouse earlier. So we're finally harvesting tomatoes now that it's almost July. But yeah, normally with my cherry type tomatoes, I don't do a lot of pruning, a little bit for airflow, but besides that, I just kind of let them do their thing. There we go, and no signs of disease out here on the lane yet, so I will be grateful for that. I feel like with all the rain that we had, I'm lucky that there's no disease over here. So over here in the greenhouse, admittedly, I've been a little bit neglectful of basically anything else but the onions. It's been a very onion focused couple of weeks for me, but I got this surprise this morning when I came in here to water. It was our first ripe tomato. I've already eaten one. Really, I'm surprised at this. I didn't know what kind of tomato volunteered over here, but it looks like it was probably a super sweet 100, which I thought was a hybrid tomato, and it still might be. That is what this tomato most closely resembles. You can see gorgeous little red fruit here. And it tastes amazing. Super excited. I'm gonna eat this other red one too, because I love fresh tomatoes, especially in the heat of the day. Usually the first tomato we get is a yellow currant tomato, but I haven't done a lot of walking around to really see if some of those have ripened. Maybe we'll do that later, but I need to harvest a little bit for my lunch. All right, so my battery died while we were in the greenhouse, but here are the cucamelons that we were able to harvest. I didn't know that there were that many out there. Happy to see it. And then I harvest some Malabar spinach leaves. And this is the rabbit salad from last night. So it's got rabbit meat and then the coleslaw that I made last week. Really, things like canned coleslaw and even canned pickles, it's better if you can wait a couple weeks up to a month before you open them, because the flavors can take a little while to meld together, but this is still delicious. And I haven't made bread today, but that is fine. These little Malabar spinach boats work really well. And then we have a little bit of Colby cheese. This is cheese that I made in March, and it's delicious. It's kind of funny how homemade cheese works. Each batch does have a little bit of a different flavor. I think it depends on a lot of factors, but with homemade cheese, you get something just a little bit different each time based on those factors, and that's actually really enjoyable. Every time I taste a different cheese and notice that it has a different flavor, I think of like the wine makers that you see in the movies, where they like swirl it around and take a sip and they say, oh, this 1987 was a really good year. March was a really good month. Wash it down with some elderflower cordial. A really delicious farm-raised lunch. I was looking forward to replacing the bottoms to these cages this year. I think we're still going to do it, but we have to wait until we're done with the rabbits for the season. I do not breed my meat rabbits over the summer because it is way too hot, but I do still have the last couple groups of grow outs that need to come out of the cage with their mamas. And these cages, the bottoms of them really have seen better days. Ideally, I wouldn't be using this gauge of wire on the bottom. We built these in 2020, and this is hardware cloth, and very likely this is all we could source locally because of, you know, supply chain issues or whatever. But this gauge is really thin, and because of that, with the weight of the rabbits on this cage, wherever I had staples before, it has popped because this is the bottom of the cage. The weight of the rabbit just constantly kind of pulls down. This isn't ideal, but this is what I have to work with. I was actually trying to source some 2-foot wide baby saver wire to replace all of my grow out cage bottoms, and on the KW Cages website it's like $6 a linear foot, not including shipping. So I have 6 grow out cages. They are 5 feet long. That's a lot. That is a lot of money for not that much cage wire. So I'm going to try to shop elsewhere. I may have to source a 3-foot wide section and cut that down, because 3-foot wide is what I've seen most often in stores, and not for like $300 a roll. So just getting these cleaned up as well as I can, and then I'll be placing staples to help prevent a sag for now. We just need to get one more round of bunnies through. My husband just gave me these longer staples. That's gonna help. These here are plastic resting mats, and this provides a spot for the rabbit to get off of the cage wire. That's pretty important no matter what, but extra important when you have a thinner gauge wire that is less than ideal like we have here. The pressure of the wire on the rabbit's foot constantly can cause a pressure sore. It's called a hawk sore. And we don't want that for our rabbits. Now, sometimes hawk sores, or the propensity to get hawk sores, is genetic, but you can't give them super low quality floor and expect even a well-bred rabbit to have nice hawk. So a resting mat is a good idea. Has been done for quite some time. We had talked about how I didn't think pre-freezing was necessary, and it probably wasn't. Before I even got the chance to come out here the very next morning, this had cooled down to the point that it needs to in order to kick on the drying process, and so the pre-freezing wasn't necessary. That it was able to freeze well and quickly on its own, and all in all the process took 33 hours. I've had it on an extended dry time just so it would wait for me, and we're ready to take them out now, and I'm excited to taste these. Smells incredible. Oh my goodness, my mouth is watering. I'm actually speechless. I know that's ridiculous. Completely true. That is really good. So what it tastes like is exactly like a caramelized onion, except for because it's been freeze dried, the flavor is intensely concentrated, and it's just like a pow in a good way to your mouth. Very good. One of my subscribers actually mentioned how you can mix the freeze dried onions with some sour cream to create your own dip really quickly. I can confirm, just from tasting this, I haven't even tried that yet, I know that would work really well. Just like those packets of the onion soup mix, a lot like that. Super great flavor. Now, I don't necessarily want to crunch this down into a powder. I want the onions to somewhat keep their shape. That's the one thing about freeze-dried foods, is sometimes they can be too brittle and too fragile, and they don't always hold their shape super well, but these are actually doing quite well. See, we've got little onion parts right there, no problem. I'm gonna pack some of this in glass jars, and then some of it I'll put in Mylar bags. Mostly because I'm getting low on jars, surprisingly. I think I've got a lot of bone broth canned, and I've been doing a lot of canning to get things out of the freezer, like jams, and I did can the caramelized onions. Those turned out great. I will put a picture of that right here. Yeah, I just need to get on top of my cabinets and get down the excess jars that I have. I just haven't done that yet. Now, because both the canned and freeze-dried onions had butter in them when I made them, that butter isn't going to last super long. A lot of freeze-dried things can last for up to 25 years if they're packaged correctly, but truly something that is higher fat like butter, it's just gonna go rancid no matter what you do. And so I'm expecting to use these onions up within about 1 or 2 years, so keep that in mind. Now, when I'm storing something in jars and planning to use it up within, a year or so, I like to put a desiccant pack in with the food just to take any moisture that might be lingering mostly from the humid air out of the jar. Today we're having a heat wave. The feels like temperature is 108, and that is due mostly to humidity. So you can probably hear, it's not just the freeze dryer making noise in the background. It's this poor little window unit air conditioner trying to take the humidity out of the air, but it's not going to be 100% successful. The desiccant pack is going to help make up for that. I have this really neat vacuum seal attachment that attaches to my vacuum sealer, and it's going to seal this jar up for me. Now that I think about it, onions they're low carb, right? Maybe to a point. They don't taste low carb the way they are right now, so maybe they're not, but I feel like this would be a good healthier snack for sure, better than something like a potato chip or whatnot. I tell you, the way that they taste, they don't taste healthy. It tastes like you're breaking a rule. Someone was telling me that you could use these a little bit like you would use breadcrumbs. So like in a meatloaf recipe or meatball recipe, adds a lot of flavor, as well as kind of acts like that binder. Since they're so dry, they would maybe soak up some of that moisture and help tie things together. And also, like on a shake and bake chicken or shake and bake rabbit, whatever suits your fancy, is like the breading on the outside of meat. Maybe not by itself, but in addition to the breading to add a nice flavor. I feel like there's a lot of possibilities here. Good afternoon. We're actually on day 4 of a pretty decent heat wave. The heat wave was supposed to let up by Tuesday, and now they've extended it through Friday. I know that a lot of the United States is super hot right now. Hopefully you guys are hanging in there. Right now we have a decent amount of cloud cover, so I'm gonna take advantage of it because I still need to do things like harvest, and stuff like that is kind of hard when there's a massive heat wave. You kind of have to work with the times that make the most sense. I think it was actually in this vlog I had talked about working in the heat instead of trying to work at night because of the mosquitoes. I guess when it's bad enough, it might be safer to brave the mosquitoes. But right now I don't even feel any mosquitoes out, but I did forget my harvest basket. And your treat. Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, he got it. This is the first time we've gone through a heat wave since we put in the new rabbitry this year. Right now things are going well because we have this cloud cover. It actually isn't bad at all outside right now. I'm sure the rabbits and the goats are appreciative of the break, but they've been handling the heat wave really well. I think our feels like temp is like a maximum of 107. We've seen more than that in years past, but they did very well through 107. I did put an extra fan down here just in case. But yeah, nobody seems stressed at all. That is good. We don't have anybody in front of the fan down here. How's it going? Is everybody in the hallway? Why do you guys do this? You have this whole barn. Yep, everyone looks good. I'm gonna go harvest, okay? Whenever we're in a heat advisory, I like to check on the animals every couple of hours because if anybody is experiencing heat stress, I want to be able to remedy that as fast as possible. The pig's wallow is nice and full, but they're out eating grass way over there. We'll leave them to it. Hey, Margie Moo. How's it going in there? Now that the onions are out, basically everything that needs harvesting out here is in the middle. The Kalima bush beans have started to flower again. Look at them all. That looks good. We were in kind of an in-between of the different flushes of beans, but the second flush is coming on. Look at how tall these peppers are. I mean, I know they're in a bed, and these guys are supposed to get pretty big, so that could probably be harvested, but I think I'm gonna leave it. See how big they get. These are called something like monster jalapeno, monstrose jalapeno, something like that. I think it can get a little bit bigger. Check out all the new blooms. That is what we want to see. There's a whole bunch down here too. Good at picking beans with one hand. I need to support the plant with one hand and then pull the beans with the other, because if I'm trying to pick like two-handed like this, just picking the beans and not also holding the plant, I'm really good at like ripping off whole parts of the plant, and it just makes you sad a little bit. Yeah, we're still getting some small harvest for the size of the space, but they've got a lot of flowers on now, so it won't be long before I'm canning beans again. A lot of times I will just snap off these little stemmy bits and snap them in half or in thirds and saute them up with whatever else I've got going on. Like, we're gonna harvest some summer squash. Can you see that yellow up there? Looks like we might have some spaghetti squash that are ready too. I may or may not pick those today. Pretty sure this one squash plant is all but dead. Maybe it is actually dead. I don't know what happened. I don't think this was the heat. These squash plants have actually been in the greenhouse since before our last frost. I planted them early because we were in the greenhouse and I could get away with that. So this is probably about the right timing. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 ripe fruits on this side. And then there are some that are getting close. 1, 2, 3 on this side, 4. This one's attached to this plant, which is looking a little bit sick as well. There's a little guy up there. I've been mulling over whether or not I want to replant some spaghetti squash or another squash variety in some of the beds that we harvested the onions out of. I'm still trying to decide, because really what I'd like to do is plant some of my brassica plants a little bit earlier this year. Hopefully I can get away with it. We gotta see what the heat does. But the idea is that I will get the greenhouse planted and be able to get all my brassicas and things harvested by Christmas time, so then I can re-amend and be ready again for the next year's spring and summer garden. See, I'm playing around a little bit with timing, and I'm trying not to back myself into a corner with that, like with what I put in here. When it comes to harvesting things like spaghetti squash, there's a couple things you can look for. Some people like to leave their winter squash on the vine until the stem at the top, where it's connected to the fruit, until that turns brown. You can also check to see how hard the rind is on the squash, and I like to take my thumbnail and just push gently into the rind, and if my thumbnail does not leave an impression, that means that the rind is nice and hard, and personally I like to harvest at that time. Now, I don't have a need for this spaghetti squash right now, so I am just gonna leave it. It'll be fine here, but I will be making plans to make something with spaghetti squash soon. There's something I used to make. It was spaghetti squash with cream cheese, bacon, peas, salt, pepper, something else, I can't remember. Oh, that is so good. You could eat it as a whole meal, just by itself. 3 more tomatoes. The sun is coming back out, but I'd like to tackle the cucamelon trellis while we're out here. These start slow and they take a little while to get going. If you've been watching the garden tours, you notice that. But once they take off, They love the heat and they just grow and grow and produce and produce. I don't think I really talked about these much the day that I harvested them for lunch the other day. I called these cucamelons, that's one of the names for them. They're also known as the Mexican sour gherkins. They don't taste really like a melon, they taste more like a cucumber with a little bit of a lemony zing. They're good and crunchy. That's what they're like on the inside. They're not necessarily great pickled, like if you're gonna can them, they get really soft, but I love them fermented. I have a video on fermenting cucamelons and I'll link that down below. You can really pick them at any size. I would say that this is probably about maximum. They do get a little bit bigger than this. If you do harvest them bigger than this, you do kind of risk the outside being a little bit tougher and the seeds just being a little bit bigger and maybe more fibrous. And a lot like something like ground cherries. You can harvest and harvest and harvest, but guaranteed you're going to miss some. They're gonna drop and you'll have volunteers. I've also heard that in some areas, this vine is perennial. Like it'll come back by the rootstock. I don't think that'll happen here. It may in the greenhouse, but I have grown them outside of the greenhouse before and they never came back for me. At least not by the rootstock. They came back from seed. I can feel the mosquitoes are out. It's not even super late in the day either. I'm gonna need a stool to harvest pretty soon. The cucamelons have been going wild and crazy, trying to grow on the garlic that's out here. I won't mind them coming out into this part of the bed once I can get the garlic harvested. This is elephant garlic over here, and it's been putting out scapes. I've come through and harvested scapes once before, but we've got some more. There's so many things that I want to show you, but I'm trying not to turn this into a garden tour because we'll be having a garden tour coming up here soon. My Winnie! Oh, hello, how are you doing in this heat? It won't be long before these girls go back into their girl pen and we let the boys out here and into their new buck house. How are you doing, Stormy? Tempest. Tempest is gonna go to her new home. She is. She's gonna go live with my friends over at GWP Homestead. Have babies over there and winter milk for them. They've never had winter milk before. I don't like to be out of milk ever. I like to get at least a half gallon a day, every single day, to include going through winter time. Because we need to make things like eggnog, don't we? He's such a sweet, I love Mooch. How's it going? It cooled down, didn't it? It is definitely starting to heat up now that the sun came out. But that was a nice break. We're coming down here to peep just in case any of these tomatoes have started to ripen. These are the Berries Crazy Cherry. This is a closer look. I didn't give you a super close look the other day, but holy cow, look at them all. So far, they are not ripe. These guys will be yellow when they're ripe. Everything's green right now. Good afternoon. It's another hot one out there today, and I'm about to put together a couple things that we use to beat the heat. So I have a bag hanging up here. This is Chev that I made with about 3/4 of a gallon of milk. This will turn into ice cream. And then the whey that's dripped out. I tend to use the whey a lot more this time of year than I do in the beginning of the year. In the beginning of the year, our goats normally kid around February, March timeframe. We have a lot of milk coming in. And usually the excess whey I will feed out to my animals, and I will make a whole bunch of things just with the milk. I don't need the excess whey to make things like oatmeal or to use in my bread recipe and things like that. I just use the milk because we've got a lot of it. But this time of year when I have a little less milk coming in, I utilize the whey a lot more, and so we're going to use some of the whey to make popsicles. We will start with the popsicle. So I like to put my popsicle mold in something more rigid. It's silicone and kind of floppy, and this helps me carry it around when the popsicles are not yet set or not yet frozen. Like so. Now earlier I told my kids I was going to be making some elderflower cordial whey popsicles, and my daughter asked me if I have any blueberries to put in. So we're gonna pull out the food processor because I do. Now each of these little sections in here fits about 4 ounces of liquid, so there should be about a quart's worth of space to fill up here. I've got a quart of the whey, It's actually a little bit less than a quart. If you didn't know, these canning jars, the volume that they are is actually a measurement to the tippy top of the jar. So this is a quart jar, but it's not quite a quart of liquid because I don't have it filled all the way to the rim, but that's fine. The other ingredients that we put in here are gonna make up the difference. Here are some of the berries we've harvested over the last little bit. We've got some blackberries and some blueberries. This is probably 3/4 of a cup of berries. This does not have to be an exact recipe. Popsicles are great. They can just be whatever you want them to be. And then for a little bit of sweetness and a brightness of flavor, I'm gonna add some of our elderflower cordial. Now this is a concentrate, so I do not need to use very much. Usually when I'm measuring it out in like a pint jar or a quart jar, I'll fill the bottom of the jar about 1/4 to 1/3 of an inch with cordial, and then I'll fill the rest with either water or kefir or whey, whatever I'm trying to sweeten. So I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it here. About 1/4 cup. Maybe I'll do a little more. There. Hello? Oh, didn't have the pusher thing in there. There we go. To help myself pour, I'm gonna put one of these pour caps on the top, and we will probably make a mess. Now sometimes you'll see that your fruit pieces will sink, sometimes they'll float. That's okay. And I'm not filling these to the absolute tippy top. As a general rule, liquids will expand about 10% when they're frozen, so keep that in mind. This is what it looks like. Just got some wooden craft sticks, and there's little holes in the top of this mold that place the stick perfectly. There we go. And freeze this for 24 hours. Okay, so we're gonna take down this chev. It's been draining for several hours. Really, you didn't have to probably drain this long, just until the whey really slows down on dripping. This is what that looks like. Normally when I make my chev, I make it out of a gallon of milk and I use a teaspoon of salt in order to salt it. Because I only had 3/4 of a gallon to make this chev, I'm gonna do 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Salt in ice cream, you say? Yes. It is not the same without it. So I'm making this recipe to feed our whole family. And when I make ice cream for all of us, I make 4 pints worth. So I'm going to need 1 1/3 cups of sugar, a decent splash of vanilla, so I can get it open. Levi's not here today to bail me out. Oh, man. That was harder than it needed to be. This vanilla I wanted to use because it's made with bourbon. It's so good. Good hefty splash. And the next thing we need is about 4 cups of milk. Depending on the chev yield, I may need to add a little bit more. The end goal is to wind up with 8 cups of the ice cream base. Like I mentioned before, we use the Ninja Creamy to whip up our ice cream real fast, and it uses these little cups. Because I wasn't using a gallon's worth of chev, I don't have enough in this cup. One of our children would be quite sad. So what I'm going to do is actually pour all of these back, add in about this much milk, and then divvy it up again. These also need to freeze for about 24 hours before we can blitz them up. This is actually Tuesday, and we don't plan to make ice cream until this Saturday. So when I make these, this will be on next week's weekly vlog. But I do have a video on the whole ice cream process. I'll link it down below so you don't have to wait. Okay, I've got another onion project to do today, but I do want to show you how the pops turned out. Here they are. I might have filled them a little full, but that's all right.
Cute.
There you go. I'll have one too. Ooh, it's actually kind of sour, but really good and really refreshing. Okie dokie, so I have some red onions here. I'm gonna pickle these. I've never done this before. There's a lot of things that are firsts for me with this giant onion harvest that we have this year. I had tried one of the tricks to cutting onions without tears. Someone had suggested to put a bowl full of water next to you while you are cutting onions, and in theory the gases that are released from the onions are attracted to moisture, which is why it hurts your eyes, and that a lot of the gases will go into the water instead of your eyes. Didn't work here. Actually, I've seen another suggestion where you cut the onions either with your mouth open or with your tongue sticking out for the same reason, and I tried that, and not only was I crying, but now my throat hurts. So yeah, I'm still working on testing out all the theories that everyone had for cutting onions tear-free. Haven't found one yet, but I'll keep trying. Alright, so we're going to be pickling the onions today, and I think that this is really going to be good in many different applications, but what I was thinking was just as like a garnish on any kind of sandwich, cold cut sandwich. Sounds really good. I got the recipe from that 1870s Homestead. So I have 2.5 pounds of onions here. I cut them into rings because that's what Rachel did, and I thought that they would be real pretty. Now I based the number of onions that I cut off of the amount of ingredients that I had. Our grocery day is Friday, today's Wednesday. I'm really low on apple cider vinegar, and this is the only red wine vinegar that I had. So as far as the ratio goes, this is as many onions as I could pickle today. I'm gonna do 1.5 cups of red wine vinegar. This is 5% acidity, as is my apple cider vinegar. There's 1 cup of that. 1/8 cup sugar, and a tablespoon of salt. Now when I was watching the video from that 1870s Homestead with pickling onions, she did a raw pack where she packed all the onions into the jar first and then added the brine. In past experience with me pickling certain things like peppers, I know these are onions, but hear me out. Sometimes when you pack a vegetable into a jar and then you add a hot liquid and then proceed to can it, the volume that the vegetables take up decreases and you wind up kind of wasting space in the jar. So what I'd like to do is heat this up to boiling, add the onions, and basically just blanch them in place, and then we'll pack the jars, and that will help like pre-reduce the onions down or pre-soften them so that we can fill the jars as best we can. Right there. Usually if you look just north of the poop, you will find the perpetrator. The tomato hornworms are here, and it just so happens that my black light flashlights just got here today. Good timing. I haven't noticed any of the parasitic wasps on the hornworms just yet. Sometimes if you see a hornworm with a whole bunch of, looks like a little tiny cocoons on its back, don't feed that to the chickens. Those little cocoons are from a parasitic wasp, and you want that kind of thing working for you in the garden. I'm just gonna throw this guy right here. Chickens will find it eventually. Yeah, it looks like I need to be on the hunt. There's no breeze tonight, but we're due to still have another couple days of this heat, and the lane here hasn't been watered since the last time that it rained. The plants are holding up really well, but I don't want to push my luck, so we're gonna get them watered. I've got a garden tour that I'm gonna film, so that will be my next video, and then I've been talking about it for weeks. I really have to do a cream separating day so I can make butter. Levi picked up, I think it was 15 bags of the pine pellet bedding for me to put in the new buck barn so that we can put our new baby bucks in their new barn before it rains again. So yeah, all of that to look forward to on the channel coming up. I'll see you guys again soon. Farrell, come here. Nope, not the camera, come here. Come here, come see me. You're a good boy. Yes, you are. You're such a good boy. Someone's gonna yell at me for kissing a goat.